Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwin, and you were watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue talking about Slaanesh as we get into the home of Slaanesh, the Palace of Slaanesh. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day. If you have any suggestions, comment down below. And if you enjoy our content, thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can do this. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Palace of Slaanesh. Found within the turbulent maelstrom of the warp is what Imperial savants call the Palace of Slaanesh, a realm created and maintained by the Prince of Pleasure himself. But unlike the other realms ruled over by the opposing Chaos Gods, Slaanesh's domain is open to any being who wishes to visit the Lord of Access. Imperial preachers and cardinals use stories taken from eyewitness descriptions of the Palace of Slaanesh as a way to warn the Imperial public about the dangers of temptation. These tales of the palace may be based on real experiences, or may be pure and mad ravings brought on by fever or drugs, but real or imagined, they are powerful tales protecting the simple-minded from dreams of uncontrolled access that corrupts the mind. The stories always describe the prince's domain as a welcoming palace that sits at the center of the Chaos God's territory. It is surrounded by 6 distinct domains arranged in concentric rings, each holding different temptations for those who dare wander through the Dark Prince's realm. In each ring, temptation is used as a weapon more powerful than a chainsword or bolter. The goal of Slaanesh's home is to consume the weak and the dim. The bodies of those who succumb to the temptations of the Dark Prince's realm are consumed by the land itself or turned into statues that beautify the view for others. The souls of these lost and damned unfortunates feed Slaanesh's insatiable hunger. He invites them in so that they might sustain him and his realm. Those who pass early tests may catch Slaanesh's eye, giving him some amusement for a time as he watches them resist, only to inevitably lose themselves to one seduction or another. Those rare few who have made it to the outer walls of the Palace of Pleasure may be graced by the visit of the Lord of Access himself. None have ever made it into the palace itself, unless Slaanesh wishes it, for all who have looked upon his perfection have fallen to their knees and given themselves over, mind, body, and soul, to this dark magistry. The first of Slaanesh's treacherous domains is the Realm of Excess of Riches, a place that confronts visitors with spectacles of riches beyond their wildest dreams. They tell of trees, grass, and other plants made from living gold. Gentle breezes cause the grass to shimmer like the waters of an ocean under a noon sun. As the wind passes over the blades of grass and through the branches and leaves of the trees, it takes on a voice that beckons all to take as much as they want and more. The mountains that rise up on the horizon reflect a glorious warm light, letting all who see them know that they too are formed from gold. Pathways from the fields are paved with cobblestones, not of granite and shale, but of ruby and emerald. At the edge of the path, loose gemstones and gold nuggets sit, waiting for anyone to pick them up and slip them into their pouch. Wandering souls ensnared by this domain would do well to recall the legends that say if those who line their pockets with these treasures were able to take their eyes off the objects of their desire, they would note that not all they see was shining. Dull bits of bone and other remains are plentiful here. These are all that is left of those who filled their pockets, pouches, sleeves, and boots with so much gold that they collapsed under the weight of it. Unwilling or unable to let the riches go, they died where they fell, smiles on their faces despite their impending ends. If an intruder is able to pass through the golden fields without succumbing to greed, he is next confronted with a lake so vast its shorelines fade to nothingness in the distance. The only other land to be seen is a smattering of pale islands, connected to each other by a network of bridges. The finest wine serves as water in these lakes, but no cups wait to be filled. The bouquet of wine is strong, pleasant, and enticing. Words from fiery sermons begin to fade in the face of such serenity. Most visitors take very little time before they give up on the idea of cups, and fall to their knees to drink directly from the lake. Head swimming with delightful intoxication, many continue to drink until they slip into the water and sink below the surface, never to be seen from again. Those who are able to lift their heads from the wine cast their gaze more closely to the islands and see them for what they are. Hunched giants holding aloft great tables heaped with extravagant feasts. Exotic fruits, rich bread, and meat of every kind are present. Swimming to these islands is perilous, and many who sense they become wine-intoxicated sink beneath the waves, joining the countless others who have slipped beneath the carmine liquid. For the ones that make it, the reward is astonishing. Each bite is better than the finest meal they have ever experienced. Each morsel is a decadent delight for the tongue. Faster and faster the wayward consume the food. The voracious eaters force handful after handful down their throats. In his blinding need to consume, he does not notice that some of the meat comes from carcasses with all too familiar forms. Even if he were to somehow stop forcing food into his own stomach long enough to recognize the fate that awaits him, he could not stop. Given completely over to gluttonous indulgence, the mortal only stops eating when his body fails and he finally collapses into the feast, awaiting for the next hungry diner. For those that survived the second ring, legends say that the Dark Prince filled his third ring of his domain with visions, scents, and experiences that overload the mind and body of anyone who makes it this far. Rich fields of pleasing textured grasses fill the ring, lit with teasing gold hues. Soft tents made of spun dream thread reflect visions gleaning from the deep subconscious of those who gaze upon them, forming corridors so narrow that a traveler cannot help but brush up against them and feel their cloying embrace. From one vista to the next, visitors travel through a series of decadent paintings, each more twisted and inviting than the last. Savants know this ring as the axis of bodily delight. The crude flesh dens of the underhives or the elegant shadowed parlors of the spires cannot present anything close to what the Lord of Endless Delight offers. Demon and mortal bodies entwine until they become one. Forms so beautiful they are difficult to look at. Resistance is all but impossible. The sights and sounds of the offered pleasures are sufficient to enthrall most who see and hear them. The assault on the senses does not end with these things. The air hangs heavy with intoxicating musk, so rich and pervasive that it penetrates the flesh of all those who pass through it, quickening the heart and opening the senses further than thought possible. Thus stimulated, flesh becomes hypersensitive to even the most gentle breath of air or tender caress. A mortal in this state is easy prey for the purveyors of delight that surround them. Closing in on their now willing victims, demonettes offer comfort with soft, voracious flesh kisses, with razor-fanged mouths, and embraces from piercing claws. If a mortal is able to overcome his cardinal instincts, he moves on to the next ring, the ring of excess of adoration. For each visitor here, the experience is unique, though there are many commonalities. Mass throngs may greet a soldier, cheering his name and erecting statues in his honor. Planetary governors may see themselves establishing such complete order that they gain control of an entire system. Whatever the scenario present to him, the victim of these visions finds it incredibly difficult to pull himself out of the dream. Unlike the dreams experienced when a person sleeps, these illusions do nothing to seem impossible. As soldiers have seen others elevated and have been trained to act for glory. History is filled with tales of governors who have carved out great realms among the stars. These and more offer solidity to the visions encountered, drawing the dreamer further and further into illusionary depths. Only self-doubt gnaws at some, and these are the ones that break free. When they do so, the dream shatters, revealing, if only for an instant, a vast plain of black sludge. Upon it, heaps of bones are buried beneath the bodies of millions of others, standing and lying in the burned ash, still trapped in their own individual delusion. The unsettling image flashes by in an instant, and the traveler is confronted by the traps of the next circle. This next ring is the ring of access of achievement. It appears to be a grand forest with dense clusters of majestic trees that house secluded open areas known as glades. The sound baffling effects of the trees put the mind in an introspective position. The long walk gives it time to wander. The glades are inviting and serene. In the center of each glade is a perfectly still pool that invites the traveler to sit and reflect upon his thoughts. As he stares into the pool, he recalls his accomplishments and dwells on what more he could achieve. Sitting there, lost in thought, the undergrowth of the glade begins to creep in on him. Thorny branches reach towards him, staggering vines descend from the trees, gently coiling around his neck. As he closes his eyes and imagines himself striking down legendary foes, conquering galaxy-spanning civilizations, or negotiating heavily favored warrants of trade, the water of the pool rises up and takes the shape of whatever represents defeat for the dreamer. Sensing something is amiss, the ensnared visitor opens his eyes and is confronted by a vision of shame and defeat, just before the branches of the vines rip off his flesh and choke the air from his lungs. The sound of his final scream, stifled by the lack of air, is a delight for the prince of painful raptures. An incredibly small number of travelers resist the temptation to dream and are spared the torment of confronting their failings. They rise exhausted by their trials and pass into the sixth and final realm that stands between them and the palace of pleasure. Upon emerging from the delightful torment of the previous 5 domains, anyone who could resist the seduction placed before them at this point would surely become legend. This is the ring of access of repose. Awaiting the beleaguered travelers is a vision of sublime peace. All struggle is surely a thing of the past, all torment a distant memory. Here is a beach of softest sand, warmed by the rays of a golden sun. Gentle breezes push scattered clouds through the perfectly blue sky. Music is carried on those same breezes, soothing the spirit. The ground itself rises up and caresses the body of the weaver wanderer. Cherubims begin to remove armor plates and burdenous belongings, coalescing from the salted mists of the waves that break on the shore. Figures with placid features and soothing hands approach and rub tired muscles. The memories of the arduous journey fade into nothingness. Peace is the wanderer's at last. It is peace eternal, if the will is not strong enough to snap consciousness back to reality. Determination sends the placid apparition screaming back to the sea. Resolve collects the displaced armor and other possessions. Herculean efforts forces the few strongest invaders to rise up and approach the final destination. The palace of pleasure lies ahead, and surely any who could pass through the 6 trials is prepared for what awaits. A determined warrior, demon or mortal, who survived the predations of the 6 circles and their inhabitants, would naturally assume that the palace of pleasure, Slaanesh's residence and seat of power, would be defended with legions of demonettes and fiends. Surely his keeper of secrets would confront any invader that made its way to the Dark Prince's abode. Thick walls must surround the grounds and towers of his great dominion. Slaanesh has no need for such defenses. Any invading force, from a lone space marine to the legions of bloodletters, would find that the only guardians present would be statues of the finest alabaster and perfectly shaped trees. Confused as these warriors might be, nothing can prepare them for the presence of the master of the realm. As the invaders contemplate what they perceived as a lack of defenses, the air stills. Unseen choirs sing, and ears weep at the unholy harmonies. A god emerges from his palace, striding confidently towards the awestruck invaders. The Dark Prince smiles. It is enough to completely disarm any who stand in his presence. They are lost, and they care little of the fact. This, the tale says, is why there are no defensive walls or demonic cords. There is simply no need. Resistance, in the face of perfection, is not a possibility. What becomes of those thus ensnared is beyond speculation, and more the subject of fevered dreams. Not one soul has trotted upon the grounds of the Palace of Pleasure and returned to tell the tale. Scholars of the obscene and decadent debate not only on the fate of those who get this far, but even the very structure of the grounds and the palace itself. There being no first-hand accounts, who can say for sure what form the Citadel takes? Some say the palace is a single humble dwelling, making the appearance of the Lord of Obsession even more grand in comparison. Others say it is the most opulent structure ever conceived, stretching for kilometers in every direction, including upward. Most agree that it must be magnificent. A god of excess and perfection walls have a home to match. If this is correct, then the spires of gold and marble surely ring an inner courtyard wherein statues of exquisite realism are placed. These statues might be the final form of those who succumb to the disarming allure of Slaanesh. If so, then their faces would bear absolute joy. These statues would capture forever the perfect moment of grace that one would surely feel in the presence of perfection. It may be that the only inhabitants of the Palace of Pleasure is Slaanesh himself. Perhaps no demons of any kind are required to embellish the inner sanctum. Or it may be that the palace is filled with life, a den of iniquity where decadence unrivaled is played out eternally. Regardless, it is the seat of power for the Lord of Pleasure, the master of painful delight, the god of obsession. It is home to Slaanesh. And those were 40 facts on the Palace of Slaanesh. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, share it with your friends. It helps out the channel when you do so. And then don't forget to thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can do this. If you guys want to support us, link in the description. It's $1 a month. Thank you ahead of time. This is awesome lore. It gives me so many ideas for D&D. This is like the perfect D&D campaign template. Each ring is a certain encounter, and I'm definitely going to use this. Yeah. If you guys have any suggestions for any other topics of Warhammer 40K, please comment down below, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. This is Gershwan with One Mind Syndicate signing out.